How's it going, everyone? We are going to take a look here. This is the SimicAggro deck that I put together. Going to take a look at a couple replays. This is a matchup against the Temporal FissureStorm deck. And again, going to start off with, the note that, hey, these games didn't save, so forgive any mistakes. We'll just try and bear with it. But this was game one. Opening hand, no lands, obviously going to drop it down to 6. 6 is a really good start. We've got 2 lands in hand, 1 green, 1 blue, and 2 Coiling Oracles that we can ramp our way back up to a full hand and kind of overcome that mulligan start. So sat down in the tournament practice room. Opponent starts with Terramorphic. These days a lot of decks aren't running the Terramorphics, the fetch lands. So I immediately kind of actually went to the Temporal FissureStorm. You'll see in a minute here when he cracks them. He plays Terramorphic and Evolving. Now that's even weirder. Most decks will, if they're playing a fetch land in this sense, will run one or the other. I did showcase a deck running 2, and that was a 3-color kind of control blink deck. You check it out on my channel. But I did at this point in time, I was considering FissureStorm. Second land drop here, clearly going to put down the island so that we can get this Coiling Oracle into play. And it actually gets us into an Evolving Wilds of our own, which is great, because we have land number 4 in hand, so we're going to be able to get that Blastoderm into play on turn 3, which is really awesome. That's kind of an ideal situation you can get out of this. But you see here he cracks and he shows blue and black. The only decks running that, other than the FissureStorm, are going to be the Dimir post-control deck, and that's not going to be running Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic in 90% of the deck lists, at least. Kind of another good start here. He plays a 3rd Terramorphic Expanse. It puts me in a really good position, and I do decide, because he has 2 land open, and I'm not entirely sure. There is a couple rogue decks that have gone around that are Mystical Teachings, and those will come in black and blue. But I decide, just in case there's a counterspell, I'm going to try and draw it out, and I'm going to play the Assault Zeppelin first. Still a pretty good play getting that in on turn 3 as opposed to 4. After I see that he does not counter it, it just tells me that, damn, I wish I had played Blastoderm, but that's okay, it's still going to get in play and do some damage. So my opponent plays a Preordain, still not really a clue as to what he's playing until this comes down. As soon as the Chancery comes out, we know that he is definitely playing Temporal FissureStorm. So he returns the land. Again, sitting pretty good because he's been unable to make a play. This is, that's his 4th turn. Usually this deck, I have played the FissureStorm deck. There's a video on it on my channel as well. You can kind of get that going on turn 4 or so. So the fact that he has not gotten it off yet is pretty impressive to me. It just gives me a good feeling. Did not get land number 5, but we have a lot of options for drops. I do decide to get the Blastoderm into play now that I know he has definitely got no counterspells. Some of these decks do run a main deck Rewind, so I'm going to be able to get this into play whenever he's tapped out. It's really kind of an ideal thing when you're playing any kind of control deck. Wait till there's no open blue mana available so that you can get that Blastoderm into play. So he goes on. He makes a couple odd choices in cracking Terramorphic. Most of the time you're going to bust those out at the end of an opponent's turn so that the land is untapped when you go into this turn. He kind of hurts himself by having that go untapped. So now he plays a Cloud of Fairies after tapping out pretty much completely, so I figure this is the point in time where he goes off, and I have 6. So let's fast forward this and you'll see what I see. So I look away, I turn back to see where he was in his storm, and it turns out he did use Probe, kind of an odd choice for this deck. I have not seen many lists running that, but maybe that's something I've just missed. He did play 2 Cloud of Fairies and a Nightscape Familiar, and that's usually a pretty good starting point to get this going. He's down to 4 cards in hand. It really slows him down that he's got only one of the Ravnica lands, but it is still very possible for him to get that Storm off. But he clearly did not, and that puts me at a very good advantage. It tells me that he does not have the draw cards in hand to make this go off. So we get a land. We're going to swing with everything, even though he can block with the Familiar and regenerate it to get rid of the Oracle. We're going to give him the opportunity to instead block the Blastoderm and prevent that 5 damage. You have to kind of assume he's going to make this play. He very well could, get rid of your Oracle just to get it off the table, but you have to make the assumption that he's going to make the block on the Blastoderm, and he does here. And kind of, seeing these big creatures is kind of forcing him to leave mana open to regenerate the nice Nightscape Familiar. If, he's not real familiar with the deck, and kind of puts him at a disadvantage on the play there. So now we have options. I could play either of the Geists here. They work nicely to block the fairies. This deck usually runs Muldrifters as well, so it actually has options to block in this matchup. Kind of a side note, I'll say it in a couple of these videos, but if you're going to sideboard out the Stormbound Geist, you want to make sure that it's against the deck that does not have flyers. I mean, if you're looking for room to slide something in, the Geists can go in a matchup against something without flyers. So I have options here. What I decide to do is I decide to play the Coiling Oracle instead of the Elder, and here's why. If I get this Oracle and he reveals a basic land, it gives me a chance that it's an island and I can get a Geist into play on this turn. If I just played the Elder, then there is no chance of getting a second creature into play. Because I'm playing Storm, I know that I want to kind of get as many creatures into play as possible, as fast as possible, so I can do the damage and kill him right away and not leave him any time to get the pieces he needs to get his Storm off. The Elder is something that is not really useful in this matchup. It's great versus anything with enchantments or artifacts, but this deck, the Temporal Fissure deck, does not run any of those. So he is just going to be actually a 3/3 body. You are not going to be able to even remove the counter from him in all your games. What's going to happen now, he actually plays Snap to return the Assault Cephalid. This is kind of an interesting play. He's really in a tough spot here. The Shroud on the Blastoderm means that he cannot get rid of that. He's going to have to just continue to block here. He's down to 9 life. I've got him on the ropes, really. When you're playing Temporal Fissure, you want to be able to use the snaps to get your combo off. The fact that he is using a snap to get rid of the Cephalid is telling me that I am in control of this game. And he's playing on his heels, because you see he's now down to 3 cards in hand and he really needs the cards. The deck does have the ability to draw, but because he is making these combo plays, it's kind of putting me at an advantage. Now he actually makes another interesting choice, decides to use Rewind on Coiling Oracle. Kind of an interesting thing, he was able to do so because of the snap. I guess it keeps 2 creatures off the field, but if I were him, I would have tried to save this Rewind for maybe when I replayed the Cephalid or something bigger, a Blastoderm, which he can handle, something like that. But that is his choice, and he is now down to 2 cards in hand, and that again puts me in a really great place, because he's not going to have the cards really to draw. He's going to need to be able to get more Familiars on the field. He does get a second one here, but to really get this going, he needs the card draw, which he does not seem to be getting. He plays an Aqueduct, and that tells me now that one of those 2 cards in his hand is a land. So he's really sitting bad. He does make an attack with the fairies. It's a good choice. He kind of needs something to stop what's going on here. He is at a disadvantage now because he had to bounce the swamp, so he's not going to be able to get those Familiars regenerated. So now we draw Mana Leak, and I am not in a position to be able to play a creature and counterspell, and that's really disappointing. Had I got another blue land, I would be able to play the Geist and have mana open for the Mana Leak. Right now, I don't have that ability. I can't play one of these 4-costed creatures because I'm only at 5 lands. So I'm still only going to be able to make 1 play per turn until I get another land going. But we are going to attack with both. Again, he does not have the regenerate ability, so whatever he decides to block the Oracle with is going to kill it. Makes another interesting choice here, gets rid of the Cloud of Fairies. Perhaps the good choice, because he needs those Familiars once he actually does come into a Deep Analysis or a Muldrifter, so he can get his combo going. It does kind of suck for him that he's already got 2 Cloud of Fairies on the field and a Snap in his graveyard, so you'll see how it plays out for him. But I do decide to play this Elder at this point in time. I could have replayed the Cephalid, but decided I would get the Elder into play instead. Again, trying to look for these counterspells, which he does have. You remember, you're like, oh, he's only got 3 mana available. Rewind is a 4 cost, but you have to remember the fact that he's got these Familiars in play. So I wanted to play the Elder and just kind of draw out a counterspell if he had it. If he didn't, I'm still sitting with a 3/3 creature, and I'm not too bad off. It doesn't have the evasion and trample that this one has, but it's still a pretty good play. So he plays Rewind. I still know that 1 card in his hand is a land, and it's basically game over. I still have 1 additional turn with the Blastoderm. He will be able to block it if he keeps the mana open and keep his Nightscape Familiars alive, but he is on the ropes right now. 1 card in hand. It's not a good place to be with this deck. Makes a good choice in his attacking creatures. He knows whatever I play is going to have Summoning Sickness. He's got the mana open to regenerate off the Blastoderm, so makes the right play there. I do draw another Cephalid. So we are going to put one of those into play. The evasion is great, and we're at a point in time where it's going to just go right over his Cloud of Fairies and do a lot of damage to him. So he's going to clearly block. This is going to be the end of my Blastoderm, and the Familiar's still going to stay alive. So he plays an Evolving Wilds, which I'm assuming is the card he had in hand last turn, since he did not play the Brainstorm. He plays the Brainstorm, and he's sitting pretty bad. He's going to crack this off, try and draw some of his lands out of there, but it's pretty much game over at this point in time. Another interesting play, decides to cycle. He had a Cloud of Fairies in his hand and decided to cycle it. Again, I have played this FissureStorm deck. I'm not terribly familiar. I guess what he's thinking at this point in time is he really needs to find the draw, and he really does, to make any kind of comeback in this game. Zephylid's going to attack. If he blocks with the Cloud of Fairies, he's going to still be taking damage. He decides not to block. I decide to play the second Zephylid because, if I played a Blastoderm, he's got blocking options to stop it. If I play a Geist, he's got blocking options to stop it. I figure getting that trample on the field was a great thing. Let's get this going, people. He does actually get another counterspell. No cards in hand. It's just game over. He does not have, he draws a card here and concedes. When he's got no cards in hand, he's run out of steam. Next turn, I'm going to be able to attack with my flyer and do the damage I need to finish him off. So when it comes to sideboarding, let's bring up this match here. Neither replay saved. But when it comes to sideboarding, you see I brought in the Echoing Truth, and I also brought in the Spreading Seas to take care of those Ravnica lands. This is kind of where my debate with Thermokarst came into play, and whether or not this is going to be a quality choice, but we'll see. I was also unsure about Echoing Truth. I thought it would be a nice opportunity to bounce Familiars. One thing you really don't want to bounce with that is going to be the Cloud of Fairies. That's giving him back a piece that enables the mana ramp on his combo. So if you do, bring in the Echoing Truth, you want to use that on Familiars as opposed to Cloud of Fairies. So opening hand, 4 lands, a little bit heavy. One is an Evolving Wild, so I can find a green. 2 for the Blastoderm, but I will be able to get my Assault Flyer into play. Now I draw Rune Snag, another great early game piece. Let's get these going real fast. He gets a turn 2 Familiar into play. That's good for him, bad for me. But we will play the island. We have the mana open now for a Rune Snag on the next turn. Kind of made it a little more difficult in this matchup just because of the fact that he's got the Familiar ability to reduce the casting cost, so it leaves more mana open. Plays a Chancery, bounces a land to his hand. So he's clearly not going to make a spell play on this turn. That's not good. Kind of hoped for a second green so I can get this Centaur into play. It did not happen. So we're just going to have to pass the turn and see what we can counterspell, if anything. Again, these are not real great here. He's going to play this Familiar, and the first Rune Snag is going to require 2 to cancel. So I may, you could have played this here. If you play this Rune Snag, he's going to stop it from canceling the Familiar from coming into play. Let's move this right here real quick. But at the same time, it does get that first one into your graveyard, and it's always the first Rune Snag that is the weakest. But I decided not to. Perhaps a bad play on my part. Land number 4 comes into play. Still haven't drawn a 5th land yet, but we're going to play that Assault Zephylid. He was tapped out to the point where he would be unable to play a Rewind if he had it in hand. So now he plays, we can get this going, the second Sunscape Familiar. You have to be aware he's not in a great spot right now. 2 cards in hand. Again, this deck does not want to be short on cards in hand, but he does have 2 blue mana available, and with these Familiars in play, that's all it's going to take to get that Rewind going. So I decide I start out and I'll attack for 3. He has no blockers. And I decide at this point in time I could play a Stormbound Geist, but playing a little more cautious because of its Storm, I decide to use the Echoing Truth and bounce these Familiars, and have the mana available for a counterspell later on. I felt this was a good play here because he only has one white mana available. So this means on his next turn he's only going to be able to replay one of those, and it kind of slows him down a little bit. It doesn't slow him down a lot because the Nightscape Familiars work for the same thing in reducing the blue mana cost, but it may slow him down just enough to force him to replay this and take that mana away from him. Again, you see a bit of a pause there. I considered again using the Rune Snag to just get that first one engrave. He gets Evolving Wild, so I know he's going to be able to find a second white mana if he needs it. But I do top off a Civic Wayfinder, and I'm going to use this. Hopefully it doesn't get countered, and it doesn't. And I am absolutely going to use this for a green. Have not made my land drop this turn, so I can get that force put into play and still have mana available for one of my counter spells if I get the opportunity. He does get the plains, as I said. I attack through. Another land, he's still not sitting very good, gets that familiar into play, and he's still at 2 cards in hand. Really not a good place for this deck. He's going to be able to stop my Wayfinders, but he will not be able to stop my flying, and he's just not looking good at all. With 2 cards in hand, he's probably got one piece of his combo, maybe not even his Storm card. Really puts me at an advantage here. So I draw another Centaur. I'm going to actually put one of those into play. And again, leave mana open for the counterspell. I could very well use Blastoderm. He's at a point in this game where he's got 3 familiars with that mana reduction plus this number of lands on the field. He's going to very easily be able to pay the 3 for Mana Leak or the 2 for Rune Snag, even the 4 later on. But I decided to just play it safe just in case. Play the Centaur, which will be able to get through even these 0/3 blockers thanks to that flanking ability. So get land number 6 at this point in time. Now we will be able to put Blastoderm into play. And he finally is able to play a counterspell off that. You see he even tapped an extra land, forgetting the fact that he has all these familiars. So at this point in time I'm like, you know what, this is way too late in the game. I need to start getting these Rune Snags into my graveyard. So I know he's going to be able to pay the 2 for this, but I still wanted to, like I said, get it in the graveyard. Blastoderm isn't going to come into play, but not a big deal on this one. Fast forwarded the turn there. So I attack through. He does play a snap on the flyer. Again, not a great thing for him to be in that position where he has to do that. You really want to use those as part of your combo enabler and not so much the fact that you need him defensively. So he was sitting 2 cards at hand here. You see this. One of those cards was a probe. He plays the probe, sees my hand. He already knows this is here. He sees the counter spells. That's not really a threat to him. But whatever he drew off that probe, he didn't like. He's gonna next turn, even if he blocks this guy for 3 turns, he knows the flyer's coming back into play, and he's not gonna be able to hold this off very well. And he knows after that I'm gonna be able to get the Geist, and he's just not gonna be able to hold it off. So he does decide to concede. I don't know. Looking at this matchup, I would say that it's usually not a favorable one. As always, a little better after sideboarding, but the fact that he just was not able to get the right draws going on really was to my benefit. Again, sideboard options, Echoing Truth to handle the familiars, but you do not want to use it. Do not use it on the Cloud of Fairies. Muldrifters if you have to, so he draws himself out even more, and will maybe deck himself, but do not use it on Cloud of Fairies. The other thing, bringing the Spreading Seas to control that. One of the things I did decide to side out in this was 2 of the Stitched Drakes. Maybe an interesting choice on that, to bring those out for Echoing Truths, but I felt that because he does not actually have any kill spells, the odds of me getting something in the graveyard were diminished. The only thing that was going to end up in the graveyard was going to be the Blastoderm when it died itself. There was not going to be another way for me to kill anything easily, so I did decide to bring those out. If the Echoing Truths did not work very well in my favor in this game, I may have brought those back in, just because of the fact that it's just, you want to get as much damage through as fast as possible against Storm.